Nancy moved quickly down the road, adjusting her blazer as she reached the bus forest all close to the bustling marketplace she'd become on her way to an interview, her coronary heart pounding with a mixture of exhilaration and anxiety. She checked her watch. If the bus came on time, she'd make it. However, then a noisy, irritated voice reduced through the noise of the marketplace. "You old hag, stop wasting my time. Do I appear to be a fool to you? You cannot pay, so get lost." Nancy grew to become closer to the commotion. Nancy grew to become and noticed an aged girl's status in front of a fruit stall. She became wearing an old, however, neatly pressed dress, her silver hair tied again in a easy bun. She appeared worried and embarrassed. "Please," the old female stated softly. "I misplaced my wallet. My grandson will carry me some cash soon." The fruit seller, a thick-set woman with a harsh expression, crossed her arms. "Lies, do you observed? I haven't seen your kind, liars with lyrics. I do not have time for beggars such as you." New York's heart tightened. Why turned into each person simply watching. Human beings stood nearby, whispering, but no one stepped in to assist. A few even chuckled as though locating humor inside the old woman's battle. The vendor leaned forward, her voice dripping with mockery. "Study yourself. You're antique-gradual and useless. You should not even be out here wasting people's time. No wonder your circle of relatives does not hassle looking after you." Nancy felt a flash of anger without wondering. She stepped ahead. "This is sufficient," she stated firmly. "You should not speak to an aged girl like that." The vendor glared at her. "Mind your very own enterprise, girl." "It's for my commercial enterprise," Nancy shot back. "She just desires a little assist, and you're treating her like a thief." Nancy reached into her own handbag, pulling out a few money. "Right here," she said. "I'll buy the fruit for her." The vendor snatched the money from her hand and shoved a small bag of apples closer to the antique female. "Take it and depart." Nancy grew to become to the aged female, her anger fading into warmth. "Right here, Grandma," she stated gently, setting the bag of fruit into her wrinkled palms, the old girl's eyes packed with tears. She touched Nye's hand with shaky hands. "Thank you, my dear," she stated. "You're so kind." Nancy smiled. "It's nothing, truly." The woman shook her head. "No, it's no longer nothing. Humans don't forestall to assist every other like this anymore." She took a deep breath, then patted the big apple's hand. "My call is Grandma Lydia." Nanny's heart softened. There was something warm and familiar about the girl, as though she had regarded her all the time. Grandma Lydia sighed, glancing around the market. "If Bess, my grandson, ought to meet a woman such as you," she murmured. Nancy chuckled. "Why do you assert that?" Grandma Lydia smiled knowingly. "Due to the fact he needs someone with a kind coronary heart." Nancy did not recognize why, but something about the way she said it made her chest tighten, as if by some means fate had simply stepped into her existence. She opened her pockets. Internal, she most effective. Had a little money left, just sufficient for both a personal cab or lunch for the week. She checked out Grandma Lydia, who still held the bag of end result, with trembling arms. The antique woman became type mild and a person's grandmother. She could not simply depart her status inside the middle of the busy market, on my own. Nancy took the money from her pockets and became to Grandma Lydia with a warm smile. "Take this, Grandma. Use it to take a taxi." Domestic Grandma Lydia's eyes widened in concern. "Oh, my pricey, no, I will see you. You don't have plenty. You should not spend your money on me." Nancy shook her head playfully. "It is excellent, absolutely. I'll just walk to the next bus for a stall and see some other bus. I am dashing for an interview. If now not, I might have individually taking you domestic, but do not worry about me if I go away now. I may not be past you." Grandma Lydia studied Nancy carefully. There was something approximately this girl. Her selflessness, her warm temperature. Grandma Lydia smiled to herself. She genuinely is different from most people. Are you positive you won't be late waiting for another bus? Grandma Lydia asked, once more worry lining her face. Nancy grinned. I promise, Grandma, except if I get too wealthy and successful, I might forget the little human beings, so being a bit overdue isn't the sort of awful component. Grandma Lydia chuckled at her playful spirit. But then she grew critical, Nancy. You are an uncommon type of lady. A man might be very lucky to have you ever. Nancy laughed lightly. Oh no, Grandma, do not tell me you are looking to set me up along with your grandson again. Grandma Lydia smirked properly. Maybe Nancy rolled her eyes playfully. I suppose I will pass for now. I slightly have time for myself. Grandma Lydia sighed, but didn't push. In addition, at least deliver me your number if I ever want assist. I understand you will be there. Nancy delivered out a small notebook, tore a bit, and quickly wrote her phone quantity of path Grandma Naomi anytime she lightly positioned the paper in Grandma Lydia's hands, waved one ultimate time, after which became speeding off towards the bus forest. Simply as Nancy disappeared into the crowd, a sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled up at the edge of the marketplace. The market human beings whispered, staring in disbelief at the antique girl. All of them avoided near the luxurious car. The lower back door swung open, and a tall, good-looking guy stepped out. He wore a tailor-made black in-shape. His posture directly, his presence commanding. His sharp jawline, piercing eyes, and neatly styled dark hair made heads flip as he walked in the direction of Grandma Lydia, and lightly helped her get into the auto. He is none other than Benjamin Lewis, the CEO of Lewis Institution. He changed into one of the richest and maximum powerful guys in the city. However, despite his wealth, he hardly ever smiled, and his eyes have been usually full of a cold willpower. Grandma, he said firmly, his voice clean, however, laced with difficulty. How oftentimes have I instructed you not to exit alone without the guards? Grandma Lydia sighed dramatically, waving him off. Oh, Benjamin, I was simply taking a little walk. I wished a few air. He frowned deeply. In this place with all the risks. What if something occurred to you, Grandma? Lydia patted his hand reassuringly. Well, I'm best. I failed to even recognize when my wallet got snatched. Benjamin's jaw clenched. What, you have been out right here all alone without cash? She waved it off as not. Anything. Do not get angry, my boy. A kind younger female stepped in and helped me. Benjamin's eyes softened. Barely who? A type-hearted younger woman she was, speeding for an interview. However, nonetheless took the time to help me. She even used her closing money to get me a cab after she paid for my end result. Benjamin's expression remained unreadable, but something in his eyes shifted as if he turned into trying to understand why a person might do the sort of issue. Grandma Lydia studied him closely before including, "You need to meet her, Benjamin. She could make an amazing wife for you." Benjamin's expression became bloodless immediately. "Not this again, Grandma." Grandma Lydia folded her palms. "Sure, this once more I instructed you," he said firmly. "I will most effective marry Rachel." Grandma Lydia sighed, pissed off Benjamin. "Rachel Williams has been missing for 15 years. The Johnson circle of relatives has attempted the whole thing to discover her. You have got looked for years, and every clue results in a dead end." Benjamin's eyes darkened, his voice low. "An extreme. I have never given up my search. I can locate Rachel, Grandma." Lydia shook her head, setting a mild hand on his. "My boy, I understand how an awful lot you loved Rachel. What if she's now not coming returned? What if destiny has something else in store for you?" Benjamin seemed to weigh his heart heavy. "I made a promise, Grandma," he stated softly. "She saved your lifestyles. She turned into my very near buddy whilst we had been young. She is the most effective girl I can marry." Grandma Lydia sighed. "However, didn't argue anymore. As an alternative, she took out the small piece of paper Nancy had written on and held it up. Well, she said, with a teasing glint in her eye, at least, take this. Benjamin glanced at the scribbled telephone quantity, but didn't take it. Grandma Lydia smiled. Great. I will keep it for now, he stated. Nothing, staring out at the busy road, because the driver quietly drove them, returned to their mansion later that day. Benjamin Lewis sat in his big glass-walled office on the Lewis Group headquarters, staring blankly at the modern settlement on his table. His head hatched across from him sat his business enterprises board of administrators, his uncle, Mr. Harold Lewis, and a few senior business companions. Benjamin, his uncle stated, leaning ahead, his voice firm, however fatherly. You're one of the maximum powerful CEOs on this city, however. Do you understand what human beings see? Benjamin barely lifted his eyes from the agreement. A businessman Harold sighed. No, they see a younger guy without a strong family life. Investors like balance. They want to recognize the enterprise could be comfortable within the destiny Benjamin knew, in which this turned into going merry. Benjamin, one of the senior partners, chimed in. It will fortify your popularity, stabilize the organization's image, and guarantee our buyers that Lewis Group has a long, strong destiny. Benjamin's jaw tightened. This wasn't the first time that they had this verbal exchange, after which there was Grandma Lydia. She had raised him after his mother and father died. She had been his rock, his only real own family left. He would do anything for her, but now even she wanted him to settle down, meet Nancy. She had said earlier, even though she was a stranger she slightly knew. He sighed, rubbing his head. I can marry when I'm equipped, he eventually said, and most effective. The lady I pick out. Harold exchanged a look with the others earlier, then talking once more. The meeting ended, however. The weight of expectation nevertheless pressed down on his shoulders. Meanwhile, Nancy sat on a bench at the bus forestall, staring down at the rejection electronic mail on her telephone. She had overlooked the interview, her one chance at a better activity, at escaping the struggles of her domestic life long gone. Her throat tightened. She wanted to cry, however. She did not regret preventing to assist Grandma Lydia. She let out a deep breath, wiped her moist eyes, and forced herself to stand up. I will discover something else, she whispered to herself. I usually do. However, as she walked home, a darkish feeling settled in her chest. Nancy stepped via the front door of the small, run-down house, her heart sinking the instant she heard her mom's sharp voice. Where have you been, Nancy? Slightly had time to reply. Earlier than her mom, Cynthia stormed towards her, eyes blazing. Did you deliver money? Cynthia demanded, fingers crossed tightly. Nancy sighed, already exhausted. Mother, I advised you. I had an interview today. I didn't get the activity. Her mother's face twisted. You spent the complete day doing nothing, and you did not bring something home. What form of daughter are you? You cannot even guide your own family. Nanny's stomach grew to become, I am a tempting mom, I virtually am. But you do not even work. And Andrew just waste money playing. A loud crash interrupted her phrases. Her brother Andrew had kicked a chair over, evident at her watch. Your mouth, Nancy, he spat. Nancy became on him. No, you watch your existence, Andrew. You do not work. You just sit around and gamble even as mother defends you. Do you even care that we will slightly afford to eat? Her mom grabbed New York's wrists, her grip tight and painful. You ungrateful female, she hissed. Do you know how an awful lot your brother is struggling? Do you know how a whole lot debt he is in? Nancy ripped her arm away. It truly is now not my fault. I should not ought to fix Andrew. Mistakes, her mother smirked coldly. Well, you may, she said. I've already observed the manner. Nancy's heart stopped. What do you suggest? Her mum smiled sweetly, the sort of smile that constantly meant something awful, Mr. Benson, she stated honestly. Nancy froze, her stomach twisted. In horror, Mr. Benson changed into antique, very vintage antique. He owned a few homes across the place, and he owned a small supermarket near their home. He wasn't very wealthy, but wealthy enough to settle her brother's playing debts. He had constantly eyed her like a prize whenever he came to their house. "No," Nancy whispered. Her mom's smile widened. "Sure, he's willing to pay a very generous amount to marry you. Enough to clean all of Andrew's playing debt." Nancy took a step back. "You're promoting me," she whispered in disbelief. Her mother's expression grew to become difficult. "I'm saving this own family." New York's arms shook with rage. "You are no longer saving everyone. You're just letting Andrew ruin himself whilst I pay the rate." Her mother's palm struck her face so fast she barely noticed it coming. A sharp slap echoed inside the room. Nancy stumbled, her cheek burning, her eyes stinging with tears. "Enough," Cynthia said coldly. "You're doing this now. NC whether or not you want it or not." Nancy touched her stinging cheek, her whole frame trembling. Something in her broke. Without any other phrase, she became and ran out of the house. Ignoring her mother's shouts at the back of her, she ran blindly via the streets, her breath coming in quick gasps as she fought. Returned her tears. Her cheeks nevertheless burned from her mom's slap. But that wasn't the worst element. The worst element changed into understanding that no matter how difficult she worked, irrespective of how an awful lot she sacrificed, it became by no means sufficient for her family. She thought of her father, the only man or woman who had ever surely cherished her before he died. He had continually stood up for her. He had shielded her from her mom's harsh words and Andrew's selfishness. However, after his passing, everything had changed. Nancy had emerged as the housekeeper, the provider, and the family's only source of income, despite the fact that she became only 2 years older than Andrew. And what had she gotten in go back? Not anything. However, in social needs, and now betrayal misplaced in idea. Her telephone all at once rang. Nancy startled, quick wiping her tears before pulling out her smartphone. Unknown number. She hesitated for a second, then spoke back. "Hey," a warm, acquainted voice spoke. "Nancy, my expensive." "It is Grandma Lydia." Nanny's face softened right away. "Grandma desire you got home secure." "Sure, my expensive," Grand Lydia replied. "I desire to test on you. I am hoping I'm not calling too late." Nancy glanced around. She had no idea where she turned into. She had been running aimlessly. "No, it is quality, Grandma." There has been a pause on the other stop of the line. Then Grandma Lydia's voice had become mild but firm, calm. "And spot me, Nancy. I'll ship you my cope with." Nancy blinked in wonder. "Proper now?" "Yes, pricey," Grandma Lydia said, "if it is no longer inconvenient." Nancy hesitated, however. Whilst her mom's merciless phrases replayed in her mind, she quickly agreed. "I will be there," she said. Within seconds, she acquired a message with the address. Nancy typed it into her Maps app, watching for a median vicinity. But while she saw where it led, her eyes widened. She stepped out of the cab, her jaw loosing as she took inside the scene before her. The grand property stood majestically below the night sky, illuminated by golden lights. The huge iron gates, embellished with problematic designs, slowly opened as the guards nodded at her with politeness. She hesitated. "Are you positive that is the right vicinity?" she requested. "The driving force?" her voice full of disbelief. The driver chuckled. "That's the address you gave me, live out. Looks like a person is certainly wealthy." Nancy gulped, stepping ahead carefully. The driveway stretched for what felt like miles, lined with flawlessly trimmed hedges and luxury cars parked neatly outside. She clutched her bag tightly, unexpectedly feeling out of location before she could 2D wager herself. The massive oak doorways swung open, and Grandma Lydia stepped out, smiling warmly. "Nancy, my pricey, you're right here," she stated fortuitously. Nancy slowly walked ahead, her gaze nonetheless scanning. the improbable luxury around her. Grandma, this is your private home? Grandma Lydia chuckled. Sure. Expensive? I stay right here with my grandson. Nice eyes widened. In addition, come inside, Grandma Lydia entreated Maine. Her through the doors, Nancy stepped in and right away felt crushed. The grand chandelier inside, the middle of the ceiling, sparkled like diamonds. The marble floors shone so brightly she should see her reflection, the steeply placed furniture, gold accents, and elegant decor made it look like something out of a film. Nancy exhaled slowly. She had never been internal a house this grand in her complete existence. I do not know what to mention, she admitted. This region is breathtaking, Grandma Lydia laughed. It is only a house. Pricey. What topics is the human being's inner Nancy grew to become to her? You stated you stay here along with your grandson? Grandma Lydia nodded yes, but he is not domestic from work, but Nancy felt interest spark in her, who precisely turned into her grandson. Grandma Lydia led Nancy to a comfy sitting place, far from the intimidating luxury of the main corridor. That is my preferred spot, Grandma Lydia said, sitting easily. It's quiet and peaceful, Nancy, comfy, a little, as a housekeeper brought in tea and biscuits as they sipped their tea. Grandma Lydia requested approximately her interview, Nancy sighed. I neglected it. Grandma Lydia frowned. Oh, expensive. I'm so sorry. Which company was it? Louis Group, Nancy said, stirring her tea absently. Grandma Lydia's eyes twinkled with entertainment, however. She said not anything for a moment, Nancy failed to note. I wager it wasn't meant to be Grandma. Lydia smiled knowingly. You never recognize, my dear. Occasionally destiny works in mysterious methods. Nancy sighed and leaned again, feeling a little better. She had anticipated to sense worse, but something about Grandma Lydia's presence turned into comforting. Why don't you stay the night? Time, Grandma Lydia stated advised, unexpectedly. Nancy blinked in surprise. What? No, It's already late, Grandma Lydia pointed out. Nancy stiffened. I stay, Grandma Lydia insisted lightly. It is only for one night. I will have a guest room prepared. Nancy hesitated. However, deep down, she did not need to head home. Kay, she subsequently stated with a small smile. I'll stay. Grandma Lydia patted her hand. Desirable, Nancy exhaled, letting herself loosen up for the first time in days. Meanwhile, a graceful black vehicle pulled into the driveway. The driving force stepped out first, then opened the passenger door. Benjamin Lewis stepped out, casting off his suit jacket and rolling his sleeves up. He became worn out, but the second he saw his grandmother's favorite sitting region lit up from the inner, he frowned. Grandma's still unsleeping, he murmured. He had no concept that in the mansion, the girl his grandmother had informed him about, the girl she wanted him to meet, was already there, dozing simply some doors far away from his very own room. Nancy stretched sleepily, feeling the softness of the mattress underneath her. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then, as she opened her eyes and noticed the elegant bedroom reminiscences from the night time earlier than flooded returned, she became in Grandma Lydia's mansion. She sat up, speedily glancing at the clock. It became morning already. She had in no way slept this peacefully earlier then. There was a soft knock on the door before a maid entered. Excellent morning, Miss Nancy, the maid stated with a hissed smile. Madame Lydia asks which you be part of her for breakfast in the eating hall. Nancy nodded, speedy, getting off the bed. She freshened up and modified into the easy clothes she had delivered along as she made her manner downstairs. She took a deep breath, still unable to believe she become right here. She entered the grand dining hall, wherein Grandma Lydia sat gratefully at the pinnacle of the desk. However, she wasn't alone. Sitting beside her was a tall, good-looking man dressed in a white clothier blouse. His sharp jawline, well-styled hair, and deep-set eyes gave him an air of authority. and strength. Nancy froze in shock. She knew that face. Benjamin Lewis, the CEO of Lewis Institution. Her heartbeat quickened. His grandma Lydia's grandson, Benjamin, appeared up at her, his face unreadable. Grandma Lydia beamed. "Nancy, come sit, dear Nancy." Slowly walked over, seeking to calm herself. Grandma Lydia gestured between them. "Benjamin, that is Nancy, the type younger lady I informed you about." Benjamin's expression did not trade. He really nodded. "I don't forget, Nancy." Apprehensive underneath his intense gaze, Quick said, "It is first class to, in the end, meet you." Benjamin nodded once more but remained silent. Then Grandma Lydia spoke again. "Benjamin, dear," she said sweetly, "Nancy needs activity." Nanny's eyes widened. "Grandma, she overlooked her interview at your agency due to the fact she became assisting me," Grandma Lydia continued. "You should provide her a process. Nancy grew to become brilliant," read Grandma Really. "You don't, Autumn," Benjamin eventually spoke, his voice clean, but commanding. "What are your qualifications?" Nancy swallowed difficult all at once, feeling like she changed into in an actual interview. "I have a degree in enterprise management," she said, speeding. "I also have revel in advertising and task management." Benjamin studied her, his sharp eyes assessing her cautiously. After some seconds, he sooner or later stated, "Magnificent." Nancy blinked in marvel. Then he began to his grandmother. "She can begin day after today," he stated. "Absolutely?" Big Apple's mouth fell open just like that. "Thanks," she stated, quick. Nevertheless, processing the whole thing, Benjamin surely nodded. "I will have the HR branch prepare your settlement, Nancy." Couldn't believe it after the entirety that had came about. She had a brand new activity at LWIS institution. No, much less. The subsequent morning, Nancy started out her new task at Lewis Group, operating as an advertising and marketing assistant within the enterprise. She changed into determined to show herself, and within some days, her supervisors had been already inspired along with her paintings. However, one element striking her, though she labored for Benjamin. He rarely spoke to her. Their interactions had been bloodless and strictly professional. It changed into clean to Nancy that he was a person who didn't mix personal matters with work. That was nice with her, at least. It was till Grandma Lydia dropped a bombshell one evening. Nancy became having dinner with Grandma Lydia on the mansion when the older lady abruptly smiled mysteriously. "Nancy? Pricey," she stated, "I have an idea." Nancy looked up curiously. What is it?" Grandma Lydia took a sip of her tea before saying casually, "You should marry Benjamin." Nancy choked on her drink, what Grandma Lydia smirked. "I suppose you could make a great couple." Nancy stared at her in disbelief. "Grandma," she shook her head fast. "We slightly know every different. Benjamin doesn't even. I'm no longer asking you to fall in love overnight." Grandma Lydia interrupted. "I am asking you to help every different nannies." Coronary heart pounded. "What do you mean?" Grandma Lydia leaned ahead. "Inform me. Approximately your dad and mom, Nancy." Nancy stiffened for a split. 2D. Earlier than forcing a small smile, they passed away. Whilst I was younger, Grandma Lydia's face softened. "I am sorry to listen that, so you stay by myself?" Nancy nodded. "Quick, sure I do." She stored her voice steady. However, interior, her heart turned into racing. She knew what her mother and Andrew had been capable of in the event that they knew approximately Benjamin and his grandmother's wealth. They could try to extort them right away. Her mother would show up crying, worrying, money, gambling. The sufferer, Andrew, might foe to be desperate, promising to trade, most effective to waste everything gambling again. She refused to allow that occur. She had already visible the disapproval in Benjamin's eyes, the way he without a doubt did not agree with her. She didn't want to show him, right? She saved the fact, I see. Grandma Lydia stated gently that ought to be difficult. Nancy certainly smiled. "I manage." Grandma Lydia studied her for a second. Earlier, then talking again nicely. "I assume you and Benjamin need to get married." Nanny's breath hitched. She had no way out. She is aware of what her mother is capable of, and Mr. Benson would not prevent till he had her Grandma Lydia changed into proper. Marrying Benjamin would protect her, and if she turned into being honest, part of her become interested in him. She wasn't positive if she ought to call it love, particularly knowing he failed to experience the identical manner. However, there has been something about him that made her heart race. Taking a deep breath, she nodded slowly. I'll do it, while Grandma Lydia informed Benjamin her thought he, without delay, refused marry her. No manner, you recognize Rachel is the one for me, he stated coldly. Grandma Lydia sighed. Benjamin, be reasonable. This can give Nancy a family and assist you. Benjamin stiffened. He knew she become proper. The board would not pressure him anymore. Traders could consider him extra, and most importantly, he may want to use this as a temporal fix to stall for time. After several minutes of silence, he subsequently spoke. I have conditions, he stated. Grandma Lydia smiled. Of root? No one can realize, he stated firmly. Now, not at paintings, not in public now, not even my business companions. Grandma Lydia blinked in wonder why Benjamin's jaw tightened, but he failed to solution, because deep down he nevertheless believed he might find Rachel. This marriage would be transient, just a defense to get his grandmother and business companions off his again, and whilst he discovered Rachel, he would annul the marriage with Nancy and marry her. Nancy, nevertheless, amazed that he agreed so fast, failed to argue or query him. She knew what she changed into stepping into. She knew this wasn't love, but part of her nonetheless wished deep down that it could be. The instant Benjamin agreed to the wedding, Grandma Lydia could not incorporate her pleasure, my boy, she stated, beaming. You may not remorse this, Benjamin. Remained silent, his expression unreadable. Nancy forced a small smile, feeling a mixture of alleviation, anxiety, and something else she could not pretty name. Grandma Lydia held the Big Apple's arms. I recognize you may take care of him, she said warmly, and that I understand he will take care of you too, although he would not understand it yet. Nancy swallowed difficult. She wasn't sure, approximately, that Benjamin had made it very clear that this marriage turned into nothing extra than an association. Still, she nodded. I'll do my exceptional, Benjamin exhaled sharply, and became to his assistant. Put together the whole thing for the registry. We'll get it carried out right away. His tone became cold, businesslike. Nancy pretended it didn't harm some days later. Benjamin and Nancy stood earlier than the wedding registrar, signing their names on a bit of paper that could make them husband and spouse on paper as a minimum. There has been no grand wedding ceremony, no circle of relatives, participants, no pals, just Benjamin, Nancy, Lydia and two legal witnesses. Nancy watched as Benjamin signed his name with practiced ease, as if this was not anything more than another commercial enterprise agreement. Her coronary heart clenched, however, she didn't permit it display. Then it became her flip. She picked up the pen and signed Nancy, Euro, Lewis, the registrar, stamped the papers and smiled. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Lewis. Nancy felt an ordinary flutter in her chest at the words phrases Mrs. Lewis. It wasn't actual, however. Still, it felt extraordinary to pay attention. Grandma Lydia clapped her fingers, thankfully pulling Nancy right into a warm hug. Welcome to the own family. My dear, Nancy smiled softly, the warm temperature of Grandma Lydia's embody comforting her. Benjamin stood stiffly beside them, his face emotionless. He'd become already questioning beforehand, planning for the day this marriage could be dissolved, once he found Rachel. But for now he had completed what turned into expected with the document signed. They had a small personal ceremony at Grandma Lydia's mansion. Not anything fancy, just a quiet dinner where they exchanged earrings for formality. Nancy seemed down on the easy yet elegant ring on her finger. It was beautiful, however. It didn't suggest whatever, at the least no longer to him. The first night time in Benjamin's large penthouse, Nancy wasn't certain what to anticipate once they arrived. He, without a doubt, passed her a key and stated, "Your room is down the corridor. We live underneath the equal roof." However, that is all this is, Nancy nodded, pretending that didn't sting. She wasn't interested in him at the least. That's what she instructed herself. She should not care that he sounded so indifferent. Got it. She spoke back, her voice even. She went to her room, final, the door at the back of her. For the first time in her lifestyles, she had a place to call her very own. It wasn't domestic, but at least it was secure at work. Nothing changed. No person knew that Nancy was now Mrs. Lewis. No longer his personal, no longer even his satisfactory pal Daniel Carter. Nancy failed to act like a CEO's spouse. She continued working hard, refusing to depend on Benjamin's money. She failed to ask for luxury automobiles or steeply precious items. She took the subway to work, much like before she sold her own coffee, and labored through the years, much like some other employee. She kept her distance from Benjamin at paintings. To anyone she turned into just any other employee, and Benjamin, he watched her from afar, secretly impressed. At the beginning, he conceived she might take benefit of their situation, call for matters, expect privileges, use his call. However, she never even cited their marriage as soon as and for some purpose. That him one night time Benjamin arrived, domestic past due after a protracted day. He predicted the penthouse to be quiet and empty, but as a substitute he located Nancy sitting at the sofa, PC open operating overdue. She looked up in surprise. "Oh, Jürgen," he raised a brow. Running, she nodded. "Yes, I had some reviews to complete." He studied her carefully. She wasn't looking TV or lounging round in luxurious. She was working hard, much like, continually, he had by no means met a lady like her earlier then. Without a word, he turned and went to his room. But that night, as he lay in bed, he observed himself thinking about her. She turned into not anything like what he had predicted, and that was beginning to unsettle him. Nancy was starting to experience at peace in her new lifestyles. She had an activity. She loved a place to sleep without fear, and even though her marriage to Benjamin wasn't a romantic one, it gave her the protection she wished. But peace never lasted long while it got here to her circle of relatives. It started out with a phone call. She was at work when her cell phone buzzed with an unknown range. She hesitated, earlier than answering. "What up, Nancy?" A determined voice came via the road. She iced up Andrew. Her coronary heart tightened. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone cold. "Nancy, please. I want your help. I'm in deep problem," Andrew pleaded. Nancy closed her eyes, already understanding what coming how lot, she said flatly. There has been a pause, then in a small, guilty voice he said, "I owe 2 million. Big Apple's grip tightened around her telephone. 2 million, she repeated in disbelief. "Andrew, how did you—" I tousled Kay. Andrew cut in, his voice shaking. "These men, they're dangerous, Nancy. If I do not pay, they will kill me." Nancy felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. It turned into, "Always like this, Andrew." Gambled, he lost, he begged for cash. Their mother defended him. Nancy changed into accomplished, cleaning up his messes. "I do not have the money," she stated firmly. Andrew scoffed. "What do you imply? You stay in a mansion now you are married to a totally wealthy guy." Nancy's stomach dropped. "How do you already know that?" she requested. Slowly, Andrew's voice turned smug. "Mum determined out after she refused to choose any of our calls. We simply knew. You have selfishly found a high-priced life for handiest yourself." Nancy gritted her too. Her mum had continually been suitable at finding approaches to break her existence. "I'm not giving you any money. I do no longer owe you. And, mother," something she said sharply. Andrew's tone turned cold. "Then do not blame me for what takes place subsequent. Nanny's blood ran bloodless. The road went dead some days later. Nancy obtained another name, this time from her mother. Nancy, see, my daughter. Her mom's voice become Candy too. Candy, can we speak? Nancy almost refused, but something told her she had to seize this once, and for all I will come, she stated. Nancy arrived at her domestic, her protect-up. Her mother greeted her with a grin. Come in, dear. Allow us have dinner together, Nancy hesitated, however. She stepped in She barely had time to sign in the odd smell before she felt her frame cross vulnerable. Her imaginative and prescient blurred, her legs gave out beneath her. The remaining components she saw became Andrew's guilty face before darkness swallowed her entire. Nancy wakened with her wrists tied to a chair. Her head pounded. She attempted to move, but her body nonetheless felt weak from the drug. She's wakeful. A deep voice said. Nancy snapped her head up. She became in a dimly lit lodge room, and sitting across from her, a sleazy smile on his face, was Mr. Benson. Worry clawed at her throat. Sooner or later, he stated, his hungry eyes scanning her. I have waited a long time for this, Nancy. Nancy struggled against her binds. You haven't any proper... Mr. Benson laughed. Oh, however... I do your mom, but you to me. Nancy felt sick. She would not, she whispered, but at the same time as she said it, she knew it changed into true. Oh, she would, Mr. Benson stated gleefully, and she did. I paid your brother's debt. You belong to me. Nancy refused to cry. She refused to break. You may not escape with this. Married. Permit me pass, she said through gritted teeth. Mr. Benson just smirked. And who's going to prevent me, your faux husband, then? As though on cue, the door burst open, and standing there, fury burning in his eyes, became Benjamin Lewis. Mr. Benson slightly had time to react before Benjamin grabbed him via the collar and slammed him against the wall. You dare contact my wife? Benjamin's voice became dangerously low. Mr. Benson gasped, struggling against Benjamin's grip. I paid for her. Benjamin's jaw clenched. She's no longer for sale. Then, without another phrase, Benjamin punched him in the face. Nancy flinched at the impact. Mr. Benson crashed to the ground, groaning. Benjamin grew to become, to Nancy, his anger softening slightly. He quick untied her arms. Are you okay? Nancy nodded shakily. Benjamin turned back to Mr. Benson, his voice bloodless, in case you ever come near her again. I will ensure you regret it. Mr. Benson stayed silent, preserving his bleeding nostril. Benjamin grabbed Nye's hand, leading her out of the room without looking. Returned the ride home, became silent. Nancy saved stealing glances at Benjamin, anticipating the explosion, looking forward to him to mention, you lied to me. She had informed him she'd become an orphan now. He knew the reality. Her mom became a greedy monster. Her brother became a parasite. Nancy clenched her fists. She had predicted him to be furious, to tell her he desired not anything to do along with her anymore. Alternatively, he definitely requested, Did they hurt you? Nancy blinked, startled. No. You came simply in time. He failed to press for more. He failed to demand a proof, rather. He simply stated, they may not contact you again. I made certain of that. Nancy's heart ached. He wasn't irritated. He didn't blame her. He just desired to protect her. Something deep internal her shifted for the first time. She found out she had fallen completely in love with him, and there has been nothing she may want to do, approximately it. Nancy had never felt as secure as she did whilst Benjamin rescued her from her own family's cruelty for the first time. She felt like she clearly belonged someplace, that someone cared enough to combat for her, and Within the days that accompanied Benjamin's bloodless demeanor began to trade, he wasn't as remote as before. At breakfast, he would ask how she was feeling. At night time, while he returned domestic from work, he might test if she had eaten. It was small matters, but they intended the whole thing to Nancy, and it gave her wish. Perhaps he changed into starting to feel something for her too. Perhaps he became falling in love along with her, simply as she had with him. But hope turned into a dangerous component, because just when Nancy's idea she was honestly satisfied, her global got here crashing down one night. Benjamin became at a proper charity gala representing Lewis Group, whilst a statement changed the entirety. "We are thrilled to introduce Miss Rachel Williams." The host declared the room fell silent, gasps echoing throughout the corridor. Rachel Williams, the lanky lost he's of the influential Williams' own family. Nancy wasn't at the occasion, however. The news spread fast. The tale became all around the media. The next morning, Rachel Williams, who had been lacking for 15 years, had in the end been located. She had grown up in an orphanage. Earlier than DNA test confirmed her identity. Her dad and mum had been extremely joyful to have her again. And what stuck Nan's attention the maximum, the thing cited that Rachel had been engaged to Benjamin as a toddler earlier than she, changed into taken away. That wasn't all. There has been also an reliable press launch confirming Rachel's return. The Williams circle of relatives made a public announcement welcoming her again into their lives and thanking everyone who had helped inside the siege through the years. New York's coronary heart sank, and although she changed into satisfied that William had their daughter again, she couldn't help feeling misplaced. Benjamin had spent his entire life attempting to find her, and now she was returned. That supposed their marriage changed into, over the moment Benjamin heard the information, he could not trust it. Rachel, in the end, those years he had searched for her anywhere, observed every lead, but they had all changed into dead ends. But here she became alive. Benjamin had to be positive. He wished proof that she became truly Rachel, so he started out spending time with her. He visited the Williams mansion. He tried to recount childhood recollections with Rachel, but she continually shook her head, a unhappy look in her eyes. "I am sorry, Ben," she said softly. Don't forget a lot. It has been. See you later." Benjamin failed to thoughts weak create new ones, he instructed her. Nancy felt unwell whilst she examined that line in one of the gossip magazines. Benjamin had spent years looking ahead to Rachel, and now he turned into, equipped to begin over with her. So long as she changed into lower back, that was all that mattered to him. Nancy failed to stand a threat in the beginning. Nancy tried to persuade herself it failed to remember. He never cherished me. Besides, she told herself, I was just a stand-in. But the achy did not concentrate. She saw the manner he smiled with Rachel, how he looked at her like she become his global. She watched from a distance as he spent increasingly time away from domestic. She heard him take calls overdue at night time. His voice gentle when talking to Rachel in a manner it had by no means been along with her. Nancy felt like an idiot. She had allowed herself consider simply for a moment that Benjamin cared about her, that perhaps simply maybe he should love her the manner she loved him. However, she had been incorrect, extraordinarily incorrect. She turned into only a transient alternative. Nancy knew she in no way stood a threat against Rachel. Rachel became his formative years' love. She turned into the one he had been searching for all his lifestyles. She turned into just a convenience, a temporary placeholder until Rachel back. Now that Rachel became lower back, Nancy became not anything. She changed into just the woman he had married out of responsibility, not out of love. And the worst element it'd harm more than she ever imagined it. She hadn't planned to fall in love with him, but she had one nighttime Nancy become taking walks beyond the personal front room of their penthouse. Whilst she heard Benjamin's voice, she wasn't looking, to E.S. drop. However, his phrases iced over her. In region, I cannot agree with you. Are certainly right here, he said softly. Nanny's heart squeezed. Then came Rachel's voice, simply as gentle, just as acquainted. I always knew you would in no way give up on me, Ben. Nanny's throat tightened. Rachel referred to as him, Ben. She had in no way dared to call him that. I ignored you a lot. Idea, we will never locate you. I am so happy your parents in no way gave up, Benjamin murmured. Nanny's chest ached. She had in no way heard him say those phrases to all people before now, not to her no longer, even once. And in that moment, Nanny knew the reality Benjamin had in no way been hers, and he in no way could be. Later than that night time, Nancy sat via the window of her bedroom staring at the town lights with a heavy heart. She had made her selection. She had cherished Benjamin in silence. Nancy knew she needed to leave. She could not spend each day watching him fall deeper into Rachel's world, even as she stood at the sidelines forgotten. The subsequent morning, Nancy knocked on Grandma Lydia's door, taking a deep breath before stepping in. The aged woman smiled warmly, however. As soon as you noticed Nanny's unhappy expression, her face fell. What is wrong, expensive? She asked lightly. Nanny swallowed tough, forcing herself to live. Sturdy! I have decided to leave, she said softly. Grandma Lydia's smile vanished. Go away? Nanny nodded, her throat tight. I like Benjamin, she admitted for the first time, but love cannot be forced, I recognize. He would not feel the identical manner Grandma Lydia reached for her hand. Now, Nancy expensive, do not rush this choice. Benjamin is complicated. He is blinded by using his beer, Nancy. Nancy shook her head. No. Grandma, he is no longer blinded, he's just in love. And it is no longer with me. Grandma Lydia sighed deeply, sadness filling her eyes. I need him to be satisfied, Nancy persisted, her voice that I cannot stand in his way. The room fell into silence. Grandma Lydia studied Nanny's face, seeing the pain hidden behind her strength. Sooner or later, the older lady nodded slowly. I apprehend, she said quietly. Nancy exhaled, shakily, relieved but additionally heartbroken. Grandma Lydia walked over to her table. You are a terrific female, Nancy, she whispered. Benjamin is an idiot for letting you cross, Nancy compelled a small smile, blinking again, her own tears deal. Deal with yourself, Grandma. And with that she walked away, leaving the whole lot at the back of her. As the door closed at the back of her, Grandma Lydia sat again in her chair, her coronary heart aching. She had lost the first-rate component that had ever took place to Benjamin, and she knew at some point he might comprehend it too. Nancy wasted no time beginning over. She filed for divorce, slicing all ties with Benjamin earlier than he even observed. She was long gone. She moved right into a small condominium, away from the penthouse she had as soon as shared with him. She discovered a brand new activity at a small advertising corporation, decided to rebuild her existence from scratch. It wasn't glamorous, but it changed into hers. She wasn't Mrs. Lewis anymore. She became just Nancy. And for the primary time in a long time, she had to learn how to live without him. However, that was less complicated said than accomplished, because regardless of how hard she tried, she could not erase him from her coronary heart. Meanwhile, Benjamin must have been glad Rachel became returned. The woman he had searched for his whole lifestyles became ultimately with him, but something wasn't proper at the beginning. He had made excuses for her reminiscence loss. It turned into regular. He instructed himself. She spent cash carelessly, looking for costly rings and designer garments. Without hesitation, she had no hobby in paintings, continually locating excuses to avoid duties at the start. Benjamin attempted to ignore it. However, one nighttime he overheard Rachel yelling at a maid for bringing her the wrong taste of tea. "I said, Jasmine, you idiot, are you deaf?" The maid flinched, searching close to tears. Benjamin's stomach twisted. This wasn't Rachel at the least. No longer the Rachel he had cherished or changed into. He clinging to a memory that not existed. Benjamin did not say something that night, however. The doubt in his heart grew stronger. He desired to believe Rachel turned into who she stated she changed into. He desired to believe the DNA test the Williams family had achieved, but deep down he couldn't shake the sensation that something turned into very, very incorrect, and he became starting to marvel, had he made the biggest mistake of his life? Styles. Benjamin sat at his table observing the DNA document in his arms, his palms tightened around the paper. Rachel wasn't the Williams' misplaced daughter. It had taken him weeks to position the pieces together at the beginning. He had left out his doubts, convincing himself that Rachel's modified personality changed into because of the years she had spent far away from her circle of relatives. The way she had manipulated the truth, Rachel hadn't simply lied. She had seduced the health practitioner, convincing him to forge the outcomes. She had taken advantage of the reality that she shared the identical first call as the real Ace. It was a carefully planned deception, and the Williams' own family had fallen for it. Absolutely, she knew they had been desperate to discover their daughter, and he or she had capitalized on that truth. However, no, not anymore. Benjamin turned into approximately to show the entirety. The Williams mansion became silent as Benjamin walked. Internal, Rachel sat between Mr. and Mrs. Williams, searching every bit like the proper daughter. She smiled up at him, however. Benjamin should see the worried flicker in her eyes. "Benjamin, darling," she stated sweetly, "you have to have known us before coming over." He overlooked her instead. He became to Mrs. Williams, his voice firm. "I want to talk with you," he stated. Something in his tone made them tense up. "What is incorrect?" Mrs. Williams asked. Benjamin positioned the DNA file at the desk, his eyes locked onto Rachel's face. "This take a look at become a lie," he stated. Silence. Rachel's smile faltered. Mrs. Williams frowned. "What do you imply?" Benjamin's voice hardened. "She isn't your daughter?" Mrs. Williams gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "It truly is not possible." The DNA test turned into cast. Benjamin interrupted. Rachel's face went light. Mrs. Williams grew to become, "To Rachel, tell him." "He's wrong," Rachel pressured, amusing. However, her voice turned into shaky. "Of course, Hugh's wrong. Why could I foe something like that?" Benjamin's eyes narrowed due to the fact. "You wanted the Williams call. You desired their wealth." Rachel's breath hitched. Benjamin took a step nearer, his voice low and perilous. "I went to the health center myself. I spoke to the team of workers, and that I had a non-public investigation executed. Bear in mind the medical doctor you used to forge the fake results." He confessed, fearing he would possibly lose his license. Rachel's fingers trembled. Mrs. Williams turned to her. Tears crammed her eyes. "Rachel informed me this is not proper," she whispered. Rachel seemed around desperately attempting to find an excuse, but there has been not anything she ought to say due to the fact she have been caught. Mr. Williams' face darkened. "We lost our daughter once," he said quietly, "and now we've got lost her again." Rachel stood up suddenly. "No, insufficient." Benjamin reduced. Rachel flinched at the coldness in his voice. She had misplaced N. She or he knew it as Benjamin drove domestic that night time. His thoughts turned into a storm of emotions. He had spent years searching for Rachel, believing she became the best lady he may want to ever love, and now she become a fraud or even worse. He realized something far greater, painful. He hadn't fallen in love with Rachel, the lady he were in love with, the memories, the woman from his beyond, the woman who were kind, selfless, and pure-hearted. Rachel had by no means been that woman, and he had been chasing a dream that never in reality existed. But as he stepped into the empty penthouse, a special pain filled his chest. Nancy, the real lady who had unknowingly come to like and care approximately the one who had cared for him even when he were too ignorant of see it. She turned into gone the following morning. Benjamin sat in his office feeling a rare sense of alleviation. Rachel become uncovered. The Williams family turned into loose from her lies, and now he may want to finally move ahead, but even as he told himself that the whole thing was settled, he felt an unusual emptiness. His thoughts stored, drifting back to Nancy. It had been weeks since she left, and no matter how difficult he tried, he could not stop lacking her presence. He had concept he cherished Rachel, but the truth changed into clean now. He had been unaware of the only girl who had in reality cared for him, and he had permit her cross. Later that night time, Benjamin turned into about to go away his office while his non-profligate investigator walked in searching surprisingly demanding sir, the investigator stated, setting a folder on the desk. I found something you need to see. Benjamin frowned. Was it the investigator hesitated? A blood donation document? From years in the past, Benjamin's heart skipped a beat. His grandmother's accident. He flipped open the folder and scanned the yellow report. And then his entire world stopped there indexed, because the blood donor become a name he in no way predicted to appear. Nancy Uro Benjamin's breath caught in his throat. Nancy had been the female all alongside she become the actual Rachel Williams. She became the one he were trying to find all his existence, and he had driven her away. His hands tightened around the report, a wave of remorse crashing into him. I should discover her, he said, standing up all of a sudden, but earlier than he should. His telephone rang. It was an unknown number. He answered, and the voice sent chills down his spine. Mr. Lewis. The voice sneered, if you want your spouse again, you better send 5 million to this account. And I'm able to tell you who took her, but in case you do no longer ship the cash, then do not worry. When we are carried out with her, you may not need her anymore. The decision ended. Benjamin's heart stopped. Nancy turned into enchants, and this time he wasn't going to lose her. Nancy awakened groggily, her wrists bound tightly in the back of her head throbbed as she tried to piece collectively what had happened. She had acquired a call from her mother girl, Cynthia, to fulfill her urgently, and despite the fact that she knew her mother had constantly been as much as no appropriate, she did not want to ignore her. Absolutely, she had agreed to fulfill her out of respect. Then, as soon as she was given to the stated area, a van had abruptly pulled up, and before she may want to react, a fabric had been pressed against her mouth. Now she changed into in a dark, filthy warehouse, and status in front of her was Rachel Nanny's stomach, twisted in horror. Rachel's face was twisted in pure rage. You certainly are a nuisance, she sneered. Nanny glared up at her. What do you want? Rachel let out a merciless giggle. Oh, sweetheart, it is no longer about what I want. It's approximately what Benjamin doesn't get. Nanny's blood ran bloodless. Rachel smirked. You see, I cannot have you ever walking, returned into his fingers. Benjamin is mine. And if I cannot have him, you then may not both. So I've made positive that might not ever appear. She snapped her hands, and abruptly a collection of dangerous-searching guys stepped into the room. New York's chest tightened in terror. Rachel crouched down, whispering in her ear, Gents, experience her all you need after tonight. Benjamin will never want you once more. Nancy struggled against the ropes, panic gripping her. But before she ought to scream for help, a new voice made her freeze. Well, properly, came a familiar, mocking voice. Nancy became felt her heart break all another time. Her mother, Madame Cynthia, stood at the doorway smirking. Nanny's frame went numb. "Mother," she whispered. "You are working with her, Madame." Cynthia shrugged. "Rachel presented me a great deal." Nancy felt ill. "You are promoting me out to a stranger," she requested in disbelief. Rachel laughed. "Stranger? Oh, Nancy didn't. Your mom ever let you know the truth?" Nice breath caught. She turned back to Cynthia, eyes huge with confusion. Her mother smirked. "You are not even my real daughter." Nancy felt just like the air had been sucked out of the room. What she choked out. Cynthia folded her arms. "I discovered you 15 years ago. You had been in a coincidence and had lost your memories. You didn't even consider your name or your dad and mom call while you woke up. You known as me mom. My husband and I have been childless, so we took you in. Then I had Andrew, and nicely I didn't need you anymore." Nay's complete global shattered the whole thing, made experience now her mother's hatred, her favoritism, closer to Andrew the way she had constantly handled Nancy. Like an outsider, Nancy closed her eyes, her heart aching in ways she never notioned possible. "So you by no means loved me." She whispered. Cynthia smirked. "You'll never mind to, love." Tears burned in Big Apple's eyes, but earlier than she ought to respond, a deafening crash echoed through the warehouse, after which gunshots. Nancy barely had time to react before men in black fits flooded the warehouse, and on the middle of them all was Benjamin. His eyes burned with fury, his frame radiating natural rage. "Get your hands off my spouse," he said in a lethal voice. Rachel took a stumbling step back. Benjamin, however, before she should speak, Benjamin grabbed her through the wrist and shoved her towards his guys. "Take her away," he ordered coldly. Rachel screamed, suffering, however. It was too overdue. The police had arrived, and he or she, changed into completed Nancy, grew to become toward Madame Cynthia, who stood frozen in vicinity. Benjamin's eyes darkened. "You are not her mother," he stated, his voice sharp as metal. "You lost the right to name yourself that the moment you sold her out." He turned to the officials. "Take her too," Madame Cynthia screamed as the police dragged her away. Nancy watched in silence, feeling nothing but emptiness, and then, abruptly, she felt hands wrap around her, warm, strong, safe. Benjamin, Nancy eventually allowed herself fall apart into his chest. Tears falling freely, he held her tightly, his grip in no way faltering. "I am so sorry, Nancy," he whispered. His voice roared with emotion. Nancy gripped his blouse, sobbing against him. For the first time in all the time, she finally felt like she belonged somewhere, no longer with Cynthia now, not with Andrew, but with Benjamin, and this time she wasn't going to allow pass. Nancy sat quietly within the health facility room, her coronary heart pounding as she watched the health practitioner hand Benjamin the DNA take a look at consequences. Her actual DNA? Check Benjamin's. Fingers shook slightly as he opened the file, scanning the file with intense eyes. Then he regarded up at her. His expression became a combination of alleviation, awe, and something deeper. "It's genuine," he whispered. "You are Rachel Williams." Nye's heart stopped only for a second. After CIA's confession, she had questioned who she sincerely was. Now she sooner or later had her answer. She wasn't the bad, deserted woman Cynthia had dealt with like a burden. She was Rachel Nancy Williams, the proper ASS famous person institution. Hours later, Nancy stood in front of the Grand Williams mansion, her heart racing. The big doors swung open, revealing Mr. and Mrs. Williams standing within the doorway. The Big Apple's mother, Mrs. Williams, let out a tender gasp, her palms flying to her mouth. Nancy felt tears sting her eyes. She didn't take into account them, but something internal her recognized them. They have been her mother and father earlier than she could say a phrase. Mrs. Williams rushed ahead, wrapping her arms around her. "My child," she sobbed, maintaining her tightly. I lost you all the time. Nancy closed her eyes, letting the warm temperature of her mom's embody wash over her. Mr. Williams soon joined, hugging them each. You're home, he whispered. You are, sooner or later, domestic. Oh God, we thank you. Days later, a grand ball became held to announce Big Apple's return to the arena. The true AIEs of Star Institution had come home. The occasion changed into stunning, attended by the richest and most powerful inside the U.S. As Nancy stepped into the ballroom in a beautiful white gown, she felt the burden of a brand new identity on her shoulders. She was not simply Nancy Okoro. She turned into Rachel Nancy Williams. She became now not simply Mrs. Lewis. She turned into the rightful proprietor of celebrity organization. The nighttime became ideal. But not anything she put together her for what passed off next, because the music softened Benjamin. All at once walked onto the stage. Taking the microphone, Nanny watched stressed as all eyes turned to him. Then he turned to her. His gaze became tender, intense, complete, of something she had in no way visible earlier. Then with gradual, deliberate steps, he walked towards her. Nanny's heart pounded. Then in the front of the complete global, Benjamin were given down on one knee. A collective gasp crammed the ballroom. Nanny's eyes widened in shock. Benjamin, his voice was constant, deep, and filled with emotion. Rachel Nancy Williams, he started preserving out a velvet field with a wide-ranging diamond ring inner. I once promised myself that I might marry Rachel, that I would really like her all the time. However, what I didn't realize returned then became that Rachel wasn't only a name. Nanny's breath hitched. Benjamin's eyes never left hers. I do not love you due to the fact you are Rachel Williams. He took a deep breath, his voice developing even more raw. I really like you. Due to the fact you're Nancy, the female who stood by way of me when I was blind, the female who cherished me even when I didn't deserve it, the girl who taught me what it sincerely mattered to love. Nanny's throat tightened. The complete room was silent. Then in a strong, unwavering voice, Benjamin spoke the phrases that changed the whole lot. I do not need to cover anymore. I do not want to pretend. I do not want a contract marriage. I want you, most effective you, and I want the complete world to know. Nancy felt tears slip down her cheeks. Benjamin's voice softened. Will you marry me once more, Nancy? However, this time, for actual, a deep silence filled the ballroom. All people waited. Grandma Lydia wiped away satisfied tears, smiling as if she had recognized this moment. Could come. Big Apple's arms trembled as she blanketed her mouth overwhelmed with emotion. Then with a voice full of love, she whispered, yes. The complete ballroom erupted in cheers. Benjamin stood up right away, slipping the ring onto her finger. Then, without hesitation, he pulled her into his fingers and kissed her. As the night went on, Nancy regarded round on the humans she loved, her dad and mom standing proudly by means of her aspect. Grandma Lydia beaming with pleasure. Benjamin retaining her hand like he by no means desired to allow cross. She had spent see you later, believing she changed into by myself. But now she knew the truth. She were found now not simply as Rachel Williams, however, as Nancy, and in Benjamin's eyes that turned into the girl he had constantly been searching for. As Grandma Leah watched them dance collectively, she smiled to herself. Two hearts meant for each, every other, she whispered softly. We're going to continually locate their manner again, irrespective of how lengthy they're separated. And with that, Nancy and Benjamin's story actually started out.